Hi, my name is Max Wild, co-founder and head of curriculum here at 343 Labs, and I'm also an Ableton-Certified trainer. If you watched the last two tutorials I did on how to create a chord progression and how to create a melody, I'm now going to show you how to make a bass line over that same piece of music. So here's one really important thing that you need to know when creating a bass line. The bass line generally needs to play the roots of the chords, and this goes for any music that has a chord progression in it. So some music doesn't use chord progressions, but any music that does use a chord progression should have the bass playing the roots of the chords. And sometimes it's not that easy to find because you would think that the root is the lowest note of the chord, but what we're going to learn is that the root is not always the lowest note of the chord. So if we go back to the chord progression, this is the chord progression right here. So we have four chords, and if you were to think that the lowest note is the root of each chord, you'd be wrong. The lowest note of the first chord is the root, but the lowest note of the second chord is not the root. Here it is the root, and then here it is not the root. So let's understand how to find the root, okay? And in order to do that, I would recommend going back to the chord video that I did for you guys to explain how inversions work and how open and closed position chords work. But I'll just show you real quick. I'll just play it for you on the piano, it's easier. C minor, G minor, A flat major, G minor. That is the chord progression. So in this sequence, we're in root position, which means that the lowest note is the root. C minor, G minor, A flat major, and G minor. Now what I did was I inverted this chord progression to make the voice leading a bit smoother, and I took the root here and I put it up an octave. On the piano it sounds like this. And then I took it one step further, and I took the top and the bottom note and dropped those down an octave. And that gives me that really rich and big sound. And what I did is I went from closed position to open position. So as you can see, we have all the same notes, they're just arranged differently. Okay, so now you might be in the situation where you're given a chord progression and you don't really know what the bass note is, okay? So you have to kind of figure it out. So for the most part, you're going to be dealing with major or minor triads. Now this is a major triad, and it consists of 4 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a major third, and 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, which is a minor third. A minor triad is the opposite. It has a minor third first, which is 1, 2, 3 half steps, and a major third, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 4 half steps. So this is major, and this is minor. And as you can see, it's always going to be 4 and 3 half steps or 3 and 4 half steps. Now in an inversion, you're going to see something like this. If I take this note up an octave, I have my first inversion, and I'm going to have an interval that is bigger than a major or minor third, okay, bigger than 3 half steps or 4 half steps. This is actually a perfect fourth, which is 5 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a perfect fourth, and that indicates to me that we're dealing with an inversion. So the quick trick is that to figure out the root in an inversion, all you have to do is find the perfect fourth interval, which is the 5 half steps, the bigger interval, the one that's sticking out, which is kind of that bigger gap. And the top note of that interval is going to be the root. So since this is my gap here, this is my perfect fourth interval, the top note is C, and that means that we have a C major triad. In a C minor triad, in first inversion, it would be the same thing. The top note of the fourth is the root of the chord. So in our case, since we're in C minor and this is the first inversion, I'm going to take that top note, which is the root we discovered is the root. I'm going to put it down an octave, and this is now in root position, and all the intervals are a minor third or a major third. So now that we know how to find the roots of the chords, I'm going to show you how to find the roots of the chords of this progression. So first of all, I'm going to scrunch up the chords from open position to closed position by selecting the bottom notes and taking them up an octave, bringing all the notes closer together. And now I'm going to take a look to see if I can find any intervals that are larger than a minor or major third. And right off the bat, I can see that this interval is 5 half steps, which is not a minor or a major third. It's actually a perfect fourth. And as I said before, the top note of that perfect fourth is going to be the root, which makes the C the root. So if the C is the root, I want this to be the bottom, so I could just take that G up an octave, and that's now in root position. I'm going to do the same here. Here is my perfect fourth. The top note of the perfect fourth is the root, so I have some type of G chord. Take the D up an octave to put it into root position. I have G minor. I'm good here because I have a major third and a minor third. And this is an A flat major triad. And then here I have a perfect fourth again, top note being the root. So let me take the bottom note and put it up an octave. And now I have a root position G minor chord. So the whole progression sounds like this. So it kind of sounds a bit different. It doesn't sound as rich and as full as the original one, which is why I had originally spread it out more and used that open position. But for creating a bass line, this is really important because it allows me to see the roots of the chords and the notes that I need to use for my bass line. So what I'm going to do now is copy that clip over to my bass. And since bass lines play just one note at a time, I'm going to delete the top notes that are not the root. So what I'm left with is this. Now that's obviously too high, so I have to drop it down at least 1 or 2 octaves. Select it again and drop it down an octave. Okay, that's good. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so that sounds much, much better. And that is the basis for our bass line, playing the roots of the chords. I could even play a bass line just consisting of the roots of the chords and I would be fine. Now, if you want to spice it up a bit and play a bass line like the one that I played in the beginning of this track, something like this, I'll show you how to do that. Let's just listen to this bass line. So all I'm doing here is I am adding a couple other notes, and the best notes to add besides the root are the octave, which is 12 half steps up, and the perfect fifth, which is 7 half steps up. And then in between that, you could add a couple scale notes if you wanted to kind of join between any of the notes in the chord, like the root. Basically, the root, the third, and the fifth sound the best because they are in the chord, and they're going to sound good in your bass line as well. So let's make a bass line kind of like this. There we go. So let's just analyze what I did. I might also quantize that real quick. So here I have my C minor chord and I'm playing the root C, and then I'm playing a G, which is the fifth of the chord. All right, so the fifth of the chord always works really well. Then going back to the root C, and then I'm playing a little passing tone, which is the B flat or the A sharp, because that passes nicely into the next chord tone, which is the root of G minor. You've really got to kind of have the chord progression in your head, okay? For these two bars, I've got C minor. For these two bars, I have G minor. For the next two bars, I have A flat major. And for these two bars, I have G minor again. So here's my root, here's my fifth root. This is the seventh. Then G minor, I have the root, fifth, root or octave, fifth, and then this is the third of G minor, going to the root of A flat major, to the fifth of A flat major. As you can see, I'm using a lot of roots and fifths. Going to the octave of A flat major, and then to the root of G minor. Let me change that to a D actually. So right here, I have a couple passing tones, and just like we use passing tones in the melody, I'm not emphasizing them and just kind of stepping through them very quickly, and then landing on the root of G minor to lead back into C minor. So if you've watched all three videos, hopefully you will have learnt how to make a chord progression, a melody, and a bass line, and use those to making your own tracks. As you can see, there is some music theory involved. If you take all this music theory knowledge and put it all together, you'll be able to get your ideas out a lot faster. Thanks for watching. My name is Max Wild. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, please click the subscribe button below. If you're interested in taking electronic music production courses in New York City or online, the link is in the description below. See you in the next video.